Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. With a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, he passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements for his clients. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about cervical and lumbar injuries. Sagi will explain what they really mean after a truck crash and why they matter more than people think. Sagi, good to see you.
Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
So we're talking about neck and lower back pain, and I'm curious, when someone walks away from a truck crash with a neck or lower back pain, what does that typically suggest about the forces involved and the potential for deeper injury? Are these just, sort of tip of the iceberg things, or what should people expect?
Yeah, so a lot of times you get these trucking crashes. Sometimes they're fatal, and then sometimes they're not. But when you have the forces of a truck, you're talking about rapid acceleration or deceleration, twisting and compression. Your neck and back, especially the neck, is going to be exposed when you have something that, let's talk about a rear ender, for example. Your neck is exposed and it flies forward and then it flies back. Think about the forces that are going in that. So a lot of times the person gets out, and we have this happen sometimes, person gets out of the crash, you got the adrenaline pumping, you think you're going to be okay. And sometimes you are okay, and then sometimes you're not okay. But, discs can get damaged. You got ligament tears, nerve irritation. You see all that happening when you have a trucking type of collision.
Got it. Yeah, I think probably your inclination is to want to be okay, right? There's almost a potential denial there. And I'm curious, can you break down the basic difference between, say, cervical spine and lumbar spine, in plain language, because, I'm a plain language guy. And also why those areas? Like why I guess they're more vulnerable given what's going on?
Yeah, it seems like that. Let's start from the top. So you have the cervical area. That's considered your neck, just a fancy word for neck. And it deals with basically the 7 bones that support your head, that keep your head up and protect your nerves. And those nerves go to your arms and your hands. So that's the cervical. Your lumbar, just another medical term that means lower back. And those are the bones that are meant to carry your body weight, handle the bending, the twisting, and they protect the nerve fibers that come out of there that go to your hips, your legs, and your feet. So when you're in a crash and your body gets whipped around or, thrown forward and backwards or sideways, depending where or how the crash happened, that means it leaves your cervical discs and your lumbar discs, the discs in your neck and in your back, vulnerable to injury. And then you have, nerve involvement and irritations. So those are the definitions of cervical and lumbar and what we're talking about.
That makes sense. Let's talk about hours or days after a crash. And you see, someone feels their injuries or their symptoms rather worsening, even when, maybe initially they felt okay. What's the reason for that typically?
So yeah, the doctors will say when you have someone who has that adrenaline rush, and again, like you said earlier, people want to feel good. Nobody's looking to say, oh, I feel hurt. They want to get back to their business, whether it's going back to work or going to pick up their kids or just going home. Nobody wants to go to a hospital setting where you can get an infection and, who knows what goes on there. So ideally you have, the inflammation starts kicking in. You have the adrenaline rush, inflammation, the swelling around the muscles, the joints, the nerves, and these little tears start getting to you. So the next morning or the next day or two, you start feeling really sore. It seems like, again, I've been doing this 26 years. This seems to happen always. It's the same. The next morning they felt sore and now they're going to the hospital or they're going to the doctor. So sometimes on day one with all that adrenaline, now I got this whole thing I have to take care of. My car damage, my this, everything's, it's a cluster. Being in a crash really throws your whole day and week and month completely in a cluster, especially if your car is destroyed. Now you got to get a rental car. You're not doing your normal day-to-day things. So it can throw you off, and hopefully it's not fatal. If it's fatal, that's a different story for the family. So
I'm curious in all the cases that you've handled and are currently handling. Are there times when what look like, oh, I'm okay, it's just a little neck tweak, or that my little back acting up or something, where it seems like no big deal, but then it later on turns out to be a much more serious issue, given maybe they got X-rays or MRIs, or uh, to look deeper, I guess. Is that a common thing, or?
yeah, absolutely. So what happens is someone gets hurt, they go to the ER, and people think, and this is what the defense tries to do. They went to the ER. The ER said they were fine. That's not true. The ER may say you have a sprain or a strain. It means you don't need emergency surgery at that moment. So at the emergency room, they discharge you. Otherwise, why would we have all these doctors who have their offices and medical offices everywhere if the ER was the only treatment the person ever needed? There's neurologists, there's orthopedics, they have their own offices. There's um, surgery centers that are not in the hospital, because you don't necessarily have to have emergency surgery to be hurt. You can be hurt, and the need for surgery comes about later because you're not making the recovery that you're supposed to make. So initially, it could be a strain, and sometimes they do heal, right? The younger population heals a lot better than you and I, Sean.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I
we're
used to
just not
bounce
going to
back
heal
quicker.
as
Yeah.
good. Yeah, we're not going to heal as someone who's younger, because your body is stronger when you're younger. You're more resilient. And
Mhm.
as we get older, we what's called degenerate, right? You
Mhm.
lose water content in your discs, and you just get a little bit older, and you don't take those injuries as good as you used to. So it could start off with a strain and become worse, or it can just fade away and all better. So if you see people stop going to treatment, they could be better. But
Yeah.
if they're still going to treatment and still dealing with this annoying aspect of life, whether it's that neck issue or back issue or the radiating going down your neck, those can be very impactful. And for a lawyer, from a lawyer's perspective, you need to know that, because you're representing a human being, and there's been changes to that human's body. And so we have to communicate that to a jury.
Well, that's interesting too. The you're talking about being at the hospital, emergency doctor visits. Now now we're into like the sort of the medical realm, and I've been there trying to understand my own medical records. What does it mean when a doctor notes things like loss of range of motion, or there's nerve involvement, or uh, wow, what is radiculopathy? It's like you start to get some jargon, right? Like
Yeah, so we'll start off with, we'll do the three that you mentioned. So loss of range of motion, radiculopathy, and some
ridiculous.
nerve involvement. Yes. So
Ah,
loss of range of motion is when you have someone who can normally move what they call flexion, which is forward, and then extension, which is backwards, right? So if they're not able to, or turn their head to the sides, right? A lot of times when people get that neck injury, just even turning, I remember when I had my neck hurt, I just turned to the right and it was painful. Now, thankfully for me, it went away right away. It was just a strain, and it didn't bother me anymore. But I know clients complain that it's hard for them to turn their head to the right or turn their head to the left. So that would be loss of some range of motion if we're dealing with the neck area. If we're dealing with the back, it would be twisting and bending down where they can't do it like they used to. So that's loss of range of motion. The next thing you have is what you called radiculopathy or radicular pain. So radiculopathy is that if you were talking about the neck and you have a herniated disc and it's pushing on the right, then you would start having that radiating pain that goes down your arm. And depending on what disc is injured, it'll depend on where you feel it in your fingers, because every disc allocates a different finger. It's a nerve that's attached. There's what they call dermatome charts, and they will tell you which disc is associated with which nerve. And if it's pushing on that nerve, then you'll know where it's radiating into what fingers. And then you have nerve involvement. So sometimes you have tingling or a burning pain or numbness. Sometimes you'll have a weakness or reflex changes. So that's what those words mean. So again, we talked about loss of range of motion, radiculopathy, and nerve involvement. So it really depends on what's going on with the disc. And what we like to do when we're in trial is we give sort of a lesson to with the doctor. We have the doctor explain it to the jury so they understand. So when anyone's in one of my trials, the jury, they're going to come out being medical pros. They're going to know everything about everything
Well,
because it's our job to educate.
right. Well, and you were, I think you were maybe making this distinction already inadvertently, but I'm wondering how you explain the difference between, say, soft tissue strains versus structural injuries, and why that difference becomes important in both, obviously, treatment, but also in proving a legal claim.
Right. So the insurance companies, they don't like radiculopathy. Why? Because that means there's something more than just what they call localized. If it's localized, it's sticking right in the neck. If it's radiculopathy, that means that nerve is being irritated. And now that nerve that runs down the shoulder all the way to the fingers, or if it's the back, it runs down your leg, whether it's the side of the leg, the front of the leg, or we've heard sciatica, which is down the back of your leg, down to your toes. So they want to be in what's called the soft tissue world, which means everything's good. The brain is a soft tissue, the heart is a soft tissue, but soft tissue injuries can be really dangerous, right? You can have a heart attack, and that's a very dangerous soft tissue. So they want to put it in a perspective that nothing's going on. So for the lawyers handling the cases, if you have someone who has radicular pain or that radiculopathy, you want to note that. You want to see that's in the record. You want to highlight that because that's not normal. People don't walk around normally having radiating pain going down their arm or down their leg, or having spasms, for example. We've heard of spasms, and spasms, for those that don't know, it's just a muscle just jumping up and down. So if you ever see that happening, that's not something that you can fake, right? You can't fake a spasm. You just, when the muscle starts jumping up and down, and you can't control that's a problem. And that's also an indication muscles irritated, the nerves are irritated, your body's obviously irritated. So it's important that we communicate that. And remember, x-rays are not going to show a disc injury. X-rays look for bone damage. MRIs show the injuries to the disc. So there's the MRI is the gold standard. X-ray is a gold standard when you're talking about broken bones. So different types of studies for different things. We have to know. They didn't teach me in a law school that I have to know all this medicine, but you start getting good at the medicine the more you do it.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, the distinction would really matter. And I know we're going to come up against time, as we often do here, but a little more sort of brass tacks, I guess. What steps would you recommend someone take early on, even before they filed a claim, to make sure that the nature and severity of a cervical or a lumbar injury are properly documented and protected?
That's actually really good. So here's what I would tell, and I tell everyone. If you're hurt, only if you're hurt, right? If you're injured or hurt, go get medical treatment. Because the longer you wait to go get medical treatment, the insurance company is going to be like, I can't be from that accident, Sean. It's got to be from something else. Someone who's hurt would have gone to the doctor. So if you're hurt, don't be like one of my friends, which I won't say their names, was involved in a crash, and it was a pretty bad impact. And he's like, I'm feeling some pain, but I don't need to go. I'm like, look, if you're hurt, just go. What could happen? At least you have a record of it. He's like, no, I'll rough it out. It'll be fine. And he took, his Tylenol and hoping Tylenol pain, hopefully it'll be better. And, a month and a half goes by and he's like, this isn't going away. So now he goes to the doctor. It's been a month and a half. Now you've created this huge gap in treatment, a gap before you even saw treatment. And to get his case settled, while it took a long time, there was a lot more work on our end. And he's like, why are they doubting? Why are they doubting me? This is clearly from the crash. I'm like, well, it may be, but the problem is there's so many other types of claims that are not. And you have clever defense lawyers. I used to be one, and they know how to attack and what they're going to attack. And they're going to say, 1 week, you didn't go to the doctor. 2 weeks, you didn't go to the doctor. 3 weeks, you didn't go to the doctor. 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. They're going to make a big fuss about it. And then everyone in their mind who's sitting on that jury, if you go to trial, now plays Monday morning quarterback.
Right.
Oh, if it was me, for sure, I would have gone to the doctor. So if you're in one of these crashes and you're hurt, go to the doctor. Now, when you go to the doctor, you got to complain of what's bothering you, because if you're not complaining, it's not going to be in that medical record. And if it's not in that medical record, it wasn't complained about. So go to the doctor, get your imaging studies. I would suggest, if you're hurt at the scene, don't take chances. Go to the ER. If there's any internal bleeding, you want to know about it. You don't want to wait. I had one client many, many years ago. I think it was like 18 or 19 years ago, almost 20 years ago. They didn't go to the ER. They had internal bleeding and they didn't make it. So not a good idea. It's always better to get checked out. So I would document what's going on. If you can get a little diary, document what's going on. And if you're hurt and the doctors are giving you a treatment plan, stick to that treatment plan, because that's going to make a difference in you getting better. And then the last thing I would say is speak to a lawyer who handles these types of cases, because personal injury, it can get complex, and the insurance company is a multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar industry. They know how to defeat these claims, and they have little traps for everyone. Sometimes there's traps that you can avoid. A lot of times with a lawyer that knows what they're doing. And so find out, does your lawyer go to trial on cases? Don't just go to any lawyer, because that's where the pitfalls are. There's some lawyers that just settle cases, and you're going to get a result. You're just not going to get the result you would get as a lawyer that actually tries cases and pushes these insurance companies to the limit. So those are some tips that hopefully, Sean, the viewers can take and learn something from it, and move forward with their cases.
Yeah, well, that's good stuff. I mean, I'm not a big rig driver, but I mean, we've all been in our, car accidents happen, and so that just some of that advice applies to anybody, right? In terms of like, okay,
Absolutely,
take the conservative approach. So, Sagi, super great. Thanks for being here. I enjoyed our conversation. That's all the time we have. Thanks for listening to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents. And if you'd like to learn more about Sagi Shaked and his work at Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers, visit the website, shakedlaw.com. You'll find resources to help you understand your rights after a serious accident and what it takes to protect your future. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to like, leave a review, and subscribe to the show if you like what you've heard. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.